Revealed. How one heartwarming journey to London transformed my life after 5 years of heartache. The moment Sarah opened her laptop and read the subject line, her heart skipped a beat. You're invited to London. It was from Jessica, her closest college friend, now living across the ocean. 5 years of struggle, heartache, and routine melted away in that instant. The memories flooded back, late-night coffee chats, the laughter, and dreams that felt so far away. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she craved a shake-up, a little bit of magic in her monotonous life as a waitress and single mother. Every day felt like walking through fog in her small Midwestern town. Folks didn't see the sacrifices she made or the resilience she showed raising her son Jake alone. It was all about the worn-out apron at the diner, and the tired smiles she offered. Each cup she filled, each plate she cleared, felt like a piece of her spirit fading. You're just a mom now, the whispers seemed to say. But deep inside, where hope flickered against the wind, a part of her missed the girl who danced with dreams, the one who believed the world was full of possibilities. When Sarah confided in her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, the words spilled out like a waterfall. What will Jake think? She had said, her voice trembling. That sweet woman, a bundle of love with soft wrinkles mapping out her kindness, took Sarah's hands in her own. You deserve this, dear. Jake will understand. It's time to show him what it means to live. The confidence that radiated from Mrs. Thompson ignited something in Sarah, a flicker, then a flame. With an appreciative nod from Jake, the decision was made. London awaited. Her feet hit the cobblestones in London, and suddenly the air tasted different. It was spiced with adventure, buzzing with laughter, and the bustling sounds of the city. She wandered through markets bursting with colors, tasted street foods that danced on her tongue, and felt the warmth of conversation with people who helped her rediscover the spark of creativity hidden for so long. And then there was Alex, the artist. They connected over a shared passion for the colors of life, the chaos of emotions. Deep conversations branched out into late nights filled with laughter, and for a moment, her fears melted away. But as she stood on the edge of this newfound liberation, the weight of her responsibilities still breathed down her neck. Returning home, her heart raced. Had she changed too much? Would the whispers grow louder, drowning out her brave new voice? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stepped back into town, the familiar sights ignited a whirlwind of anxiety. Her heart sank. Old friends and acquaintances seemed to sidestep her, eyes filled with unspoken judgments. Why was she different? The town had shaped her life, but had they cast her in a role she could never escape? A community event aimed at bridging divides loomed ahead, filled with neighbors who carried their own biases. Would they embrace her, or cast her aside? Time spun like a DJ's record, landing on a moment where she'd have to choose. Would she be brave enough to stand tall for herself, for Jake, and for the dreams she had once thought were buried? Just as the doubt seeped in, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. Was that her? The woman who stepped out, unafraid and alive? A storm brewed inside. She was on the brink of breaking free from the chains of conversation that held her back. The question loomed: could she carve her own path amidst the prejudices, or would she remain just a ghost of who she could be? The day of the community event dawned, bright and unyielding, scattering the fog of doubt that had loomed over Sarah since her return. She stood in front of the mirror, wearing a deep navy dress that danced gently around her knees. Recalling how Alex once complimented her for embracing her colors, she felt vibrant today. But underneath the surface, turmoil bubbled. "Mom, you look pretty." Jake burst into her room, his face lighting up her heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. His innocence reminded her of the reason she fought. She smiled, smoothing out the wrinkles of the fabric. "Thanks, buddy. Ready to go? Can we stop for ice cream on the way?" She chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Of course. A sugar rush is a great way to start." The roads wound with a sense of familiarity, the trees lining the streets whispering secrets of their past. As they approached the town square, Sarah's pulse quickened. Small booths lined the way, some festooned with bright banners and ribbons. Music floated through the air, tugging at memories woven with laughter and old friends. But now, she felt like an outsider in her own life. Spectators milling about seemed more interested in their small talk than in recognizing the woman she had become. Where were those who had once rallied around her? Instead, she caught sidelong glances, curiosity mixed with judgment. The weight of their scrutinizing stares felt like a heavy cloak draped over her shoulders. "Hey Mom," Jake called, pulling her attention to a petting zoo. She watched him interact with the animals, his laughter echoing against the walls of her anxiety. He engaged with the goats, his joy a momentary recognition of how far they had come together. "Let us take a picture," she said, bringing her phone from her pocket, determined to capture this moment of spontaneity. As Jake posed with the goats, the warmth of his laughter spread through her like sunlight filtering through a crowded forest. When they stepped away from the pen, she faced the crowd again, uncertainty gripping her. If she could stand in front of that zoo, could she stand here too? A pang of fear intertwined with exhilaration, the very essence of growth. "Mom, let us get some lemonade." Jake tugged her hand. As they walked, she caught sight of Mrs. Thompson on the far end, clad in her vibrant floral dress, holding a plate of homemade cookies. Sarah's heart swelled at the sight. The woman's kindness had always reminded her there were voices that belonged to love and support, that they could drown out the whispers of doubt around her. "Mrs. Thompson." Sarah approached, her heartbeat steadying as she recognized a familiar anchor amidst the tempest. "Sarah, darling, you look radiant." The older woman's eyes sparkled. They embraced, the warmth enveloping her like a blanket of reassurance. But just then, a few townspeople gathered nearby whispered amongst themselves. Sarah's heart lurched, tethered to the judgment she feared. She turned back to Jake, who was engaged in his own world of wonder. In that moment she realized, it was not about proving herself to them, but about being authentic for herself and her son. With renewed resolve, she faced the crowd, fists clenched slightly at her sides. What was she still afraid of? Each judgment felt like a thread that bound her, but she held the scissors. When Mrs. Thompson continued to speak, her words were warm, but Sarah could feel a shift inside her as she took a deep breath, ready to face the collective gaze of her past. "Jake, why don't you grab a cookie?" she said, motioning him toward the table. The simple act shifted something inside her. She was ready to reclaim herself. But just as she stepped forward, the conversation shifted in her direction. "I hear Sarah's been to London." A voice rang out from the small crowd, eyes narrowing. What is she doing back here? The tension spun like a tornado in her gut. What would she say? How would she respond to the scrutiny? And as she opened her mouth to respond, she could feel the storm inside her spinning into clarity, ready to just let it all out. She felt it, building no longer just a whisper of the past, but a declaration of her truth. Would she soar or falter? Would her voice be strong enough to cut through the noise? The next moment could define everything. Would she reclaim her narrative? Sarah felt a rush of heat flood her cheeks as she turned toward the voice that had pierced her moment of clarity. The crowd shifted subtly, attention drawn to her, as if she had suddenly become the leading act in a drama. It was a familiar sensation, the spotlight of judgment, but this time, she could choose to illuminate her own truth. "I'm back because I chose to be," she heard herself say, her voice rising above the murmurs of disbelief around her. It was a simple answer, yet the words carried a weight she hadn't felt in years. The filigree of her past danced through her memory, and for the first time, she felt the tether of shame loosen its grip. "Chosen to pick up the pieces?" came another voice, dripping with skepticism. Sarah's heart thumped in her chest, nothing like a line of questioning to invite old wounds to the surface. But there was something different this time. She wasn't here to defend herself. She was here to stand tall. "Yeah, to pick up the pieces," she retorted, her boldness catching her by surprise. "To heal and discover who I am outside of everything that was expected of me. I'm not the same Sarah I was before, and that's okay." Jake's face beamed with pride as he returned from the cookie table. He clutched a chocolate chip cookie in one hand, and waved the other at the crowd, happy. The moment he saw her, he rushed to her side, stealing all distraction with his sweet tooth and infectious innocence. "Mom, look at my cookie," he exclaimed, oblivious to the tension cloaked around them. Sarah knelt beside him, her heart swelling. "That's awesome, buddy. You make the best choices." The crowd began to shift, expressions of disbelief faltering alongside murmurs of intrigue. People exchanged glances, some softened, contemplating her transformation while some still held on to their skepticism. She could sense the turning tide, an opportunity blooming in the lingering uncertainty. "Doing okay, Mrs. Thompson?" a nearby woman asked, breaking the weight of the moment. "Just fine, thank you." Mrs. Thompson smiled encouragingly at Sarah, her eyes twinkling as if to say, "You've got this." Sarah inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the gathering. This was indeed her moment, and she would not shrink back. "I came back," she continued, "because there's something special about this place. We've shared stories, built memories, and if I'm going to rewrite mine, I want to do it right here with my son. I just want ice cream." Jake's laugh rippled through the crowd, a refreshing reminder of happiness. For him, today was about fun. For her, it was a reclaiming of the narrative tangled in the whispers of her past. The flickering doubt in the crowd began to dim, and some faces softened, catching a glimpse of the empowered Sarah she begged to believe she could be. She returned her focus to Jake, the tiny anchor helping her weather the storm. She reached out, ruffled his hair and smiled. "After lemonade, how about we find that ice cream?" "Yeah," he shouted, racing ahead with the excitement only a child could muster. Laughter rippled through the group as Sarah rose after him, a small ripple of disbelief still floating like dust in the air. But beneath it lay a brewing acceptance, a tide she hoped was changing. As she pushed through the crowd, she felt lighter. The words today were only the beginning. How far could she go with this new freedom, and with her son by her side? But just then, a familiar face appeared from the crowd, one she hadn't expected to see here today, a face from her past that often lingered in her thoughts, both softening and haunting them. "Sarah, is it really you?" Alex stepped forward, and her breath hitched at the suddenness of his presence. The air thickened with possibility as she registered his look of awe. Was she prepared to revisit that chapter of her life? The narrative was still unfolding, and she was determined to remain the author of her own story. What might Alex's reappearance mean for both her past and the new path she was carving? Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing as Alex's familiar voice washed over her like a tide of memories. The last time she had seen him, life had felt so different, so much heavier. Yet here he was, standing before her, a ghost from a time she thought she had buried deep. "Alex, what are you doing here?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked as surprised as she felt, his blue eyes wide, searching hers for answers. "I heard you were back in town. I had to see you." A nervous smile crossed his face, reminiscent of their younger days, when every interaction felt sweetly electric. A flurry of emotions swirled inside Sarah. She wanted to run, to hide, but Jake's laughter drew her back to the present. She couldn't let her past dictate her today. "It's been a long time," she said, trying to sound casual, though the tremble in her voice gave her away. 5 years, right?" he said, scratching his head in a way that was achingly familiar. They had shared so many moments, but that time had also hollowed out pieces of who they once were together. She took a step closer, aware of the crowd fading into the background. "I didn't think you'd come back after." He trailed off uncertainly. The unspoken words hung in the air between them, thick and awkward. "After everything that happened, I didn't think I would either," Sarah admitted, glancing down at Jake playing with some other kids. "But I'm here now, and I'm trying to be a better version of me. For him." She nodded towards her son. Alex's gaze softened as he watched Jake. "Yes, great," he said simply. "You've done an amazing job." "Thank you," she replied, warmed by his compliment. It felt like a small gift in the midst of their complicated history. She had fought hard for her son, and hearing that acknowledgement meant more than she expected. "So, what's next for you?" Alex asked, stepping slightly closer. She could feel the pull of their connection, the unbroken thread of familiarity still linking them, no matter the distance or time. "I am figuring that out." She hesitated, weighing her words. "I want to rebuild, really rebuild. Not just my life but my relationship with this town, with everyone, including you." There was a long pause. He looked as if he wanted to say something, but the moment stretched thick with caution. Sarah swallowed, her heart racing. Did she dare hope for a different future? A different relationship with Alex? Maybe we could talk later, catch up properly? He finally offered, the warmth in his voice tempting her to reach for those old feelings. Yeah, I do like that, she replied softly, feeling a flutter of yearning mixed with trepidation. The past wasn't just a shadow, it was real and present, and she needed to be ready for that kind of confrontation. Just then, Jake bounded back to her, a grin plastered across his little face. Can I have 2 scoops of ice cream? Of course you can, Sarah exclaimed, ruffling his hair. Why not? You deserve it, she added, shooting a quick glance back at Alex, who seemed momentarily uplifted by Jake's exuberance. I guess I better go catch up, Alex said reluctantly, retreating back into the gathering, but not before sparking a flicker of something in her heart. As she turned away to follow Jake, the crowd still buzzed around her, though now it felt different paints of hope mixing with the sharp edges of doubt. With every step towards the lemonade stand, she felt the weight of choices stretching in front of her. Could she really rewrite her story? Could she navigate the complexities of her past with both Alex and Jake in the picture? The stakes suddenly felt higher, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her next moments would be pivotal. And as she poured a cup of lemonade, she caught a glimpse of Alex in the crowd, his gaze locked onto her. What choices would they make, and how would they shape the chapters yet to come? The narrative was beginning to pull her in directions she hadn't anticipated. What if facing her past led to untold possibilities? Would she be brave enough to answer that call? The sweet tang of lemonade filled the air, mingling with the laughter of children and the distant sounds of summer festivities. Sarah poured the drink, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the brief encounter with Alex like a film reel stuck on repeat. The way his eyes lit up when he mentioned Jake, how his smile felt like both a balm and a jolt to her heart. Mom, look. Jake's voice broke through her reverie. He was holding 2 ice cream cones, his eyes wide with delight. One was for him, the other, covered with colorful sprinkles, was meant for her. You're the best, she said, her heart swelling with pride and love as she took the offered cone. That moment, witnessing his happiness, reignited her sense of purpose. The past had left its mark, but Jake was her future, and she couldn't shy away from the messy, beautiful path ahead. As they walked away from the stand, Jake wrapped his small hand around hers, and she found comfort in his innocence. They maneuvered through the crowd, laughter and music creating a vibrant tapestry around them. Yet Sarah's mind consistently drifted back to Alex. The unresolved feelings stirred inside her like a storm, threatening to spill over. Mom, can we go on the swings? Jake bounced excitedly, pulling her toward the vintage playground set up for the festival. Of course, she replied, eager to channel her swirling emotions into fun. The swings creaked as they took seat after seat, flying high into the air. A brief escape from the weight of her thoughts. Look at me, Jake shouted, kicking his legs, trying to reach the clouds. His laughter was infectious, drawing a smile even from her heart that had felt so heavy earlier. As they swung higher, she glanced around, spotting Alex engaging with a group of old friends across the way. Her pulse quickened. What if he approached her? What if their conversations danced into deeper waters? She felt a mix of longing and fear. Should she just embrace this chance, or keep her distance? With each swing back, she flirted with the notion of possibility. Perhaps reconnecting with Alex didn't mean repeating the past, it could mean finding closure. Or even better, forging a new beginning. Mom. Jake's voice jolted her back to the present. I just saw Mr. Thompson. Can we go say hi? Sure, babe, she said, willing her nerves to settle. As they walked over, she noticed how easily he moved among the adults, confident and joyful. He was a reflection of her efforts, of how she fought through her struggles to give him a stable life. Mr. Thompson welcomed them with a broad smile, his demeanor warm and inviting. Sarah, it's wonderful to see you. Jake's growing up so fast. Thanks, Mr. Thompson, she managed, grateful for the distraction. For a brief moment, she shared stories of life in the city, of new beginnings, and watched Jake bask in the attention, his laughter ringing pure and sweet. But as the conversation flowed, she felt a pull in her chest. Alex was still in her line of vision, watching, waiting. What did he want? What did she want? Mom, can I go play? Jake asked, suddenly looking eager to join other kids. Of course. Just be careful. Sarah called after him as he dashed off, lost in the joy of the festival. Left momentarily alone, she turned back to Alex, who was now making his way toward her. Butterflies danced in her stomach. Hey, he greeted, and the normality of that word felt like a leap into uncertainty. You okay? Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding. Here it was the chance she had hoped for. Yet the weight of the moment felt enormous. Would she be able to voice everything unspoken? She started, but her voice faltered, trapped in the complexity of her feelings. Just then, Jake burst back into her circle, breathless and grinning from ear to ear. Mom, I made a new friend. That's great, sweetie, she said, torn between joy for her son and the unresolved tension hanging between her and Alex. As they chatted, Sarah felt the stakes rise once again. Would she be able to face not just Alex, but the echoes of their past? Could this day end not with a goodbye, but with a chance to rebuild? The question lingered heavily in the air, and Sarah knew she was at a crossroad, teetering on the edge of choices that could change everything. What would she decide when the moment came to truly face her past? The vibrant colors of the fair washed over Sarah like a wave of nostalgia, but the possibilities pressing down on her felt even more intense. As Jake eagerly recounted his encounter with his new friend, a kind girl named Emma, she found herself torn between the innocent joy radiating from her son and the complex surge of feelings that Alex invoked in her heart. Mom, she said she has a puppy, Jake exclaimed, bouncing on his feet. Can we get a puppy too? Sarah chuckled, running a hand through his hair. Let us see how well you take care of your ice cream first, mister. It was a moment of lightness that she leaned into, but the weight of Alex's gaze lingered. Focus, she thought. She needed to make a decision. No more avoiding what was brewing. Their past was full of memories, both good and painful. But today was about the present. It was about Jake. Jake tugged on her hand, pulling her toward the inflatable bounce house. Can we go? Please. His enthusiasm was contagious. The sound of laughter, the smell of cotton candy, and the joyful chaos reminded her of how much she loved this life she was building. They entered the bounce house, and for a moment, all of Sarah's worries seemed to float away as she watched Jake launch himself into the inflated walls. His laughter bubbled up like soda pop, bright and effervescent, and her heart swelled with love. But as they leapt and tumbled, she couldn't escape the reality waiting outside. When she glanced back, Alex was closer, leaning against the entrance to the bounce house with a curious smile that made her heart race. Hey, mind if I join? He called, and there was no backing away now. Sure, she said, her voice a bit breathless. Jake cheered as he saw Alex, and they both welcomed him into their little world of inflatable joy. What's your name? Jake asked, bouncing higher, eyes wide with excitement. Alex, he replied, grinning as he bounced alongside them. You have a lot of energy, kid. Mom, can I show him my flip? Jake exclaimed, and before she could answer, her son was doing just that, spiraling through the air like a little acrobat. As Alex and Sarah watched, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They were both seeing Jake not just as a child, but as a continuation of their shared history. It felt as if their laughter echoed between them, creating bridges where walls once stood. Jake's doing pretty amazing, he said quietly, leaning closer to Sarah. You must be proud. More than you know, she whispered back. But the weight of that pride felt tangible. It was the love she had poured into motherhood while navigating the storms of her past. With a swift gesture, Alex reached out, lightly touching her arm. Sarah, can we talk? Just us? The bounce house spun around them, and for that brief moment, she hesitated. There was so much still unsaid, so much at stake. Yet the soft, insistent pull of his request drew her in. Okay, she breathed, feeling the world around them fade slightly. Jake was too caught up in his fun to take notice, and it felt like they had just stepped into a small world where only they existed. Let us go grab something to drink, Alex suggested. And suddenly the melody of the fair seemed to fade into the background as her heart raced with anticipation. As they stepped outside the bounce house, Sarah felt the cool air wrap around her, mingling with the flutter of her emotions. Would this conversation lead them to closure, or would it spark something new? She had a million questions, but one echoed louder than the rest. What if confronting their past revealed more than either of them expected? With Jake still bouncing away in the distance, Sarah faced Alex, and the moment shouldered the weight of their shared history. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her, as everything they once were began to pulse with potential. And suddenly it was clear. "Let us talk," she agreed, her voice steady, but her heart raced as she prepared to step into the unknown. What would happen when the truth surfaced? Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself against the cool embrace of the fair evening air. The vibrant colors blurred around her, but Alex's face remained clear. He looked at her with those familiar, searching eyes, the ones she once knew so well. "Just us," he echoed softly, leading her toward a booth where a gentle buzz of conversation mingled with the enticing scents of fried food and cinnamon. They settled on a rickety wooden bench, its paint chipped and faded, a reminder of better days gone by. "Remember this spot?" Alex asked, a hint of wistfulness in his voice. "How could I forget?" Sarah replied, forcing a smile. "You always said their lemonade was the best on earth." A shadow of a grin crossed his lips. That shared memory somehow bridged the gap that years had widened. They were friends once, entwined in dreams and plans, before everything unraveled. "So how's life?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. She couldn't help but laugh lightly. "You want the real answer, or the polite one?" "Real, definitely," he said, leaning slightly closer. Sarah inhaled deeply, preparing to spill the truth, but then she paused. Would he really understand? The night felt heavy with unspoken words. "Life is good. Busy, you know. Jake keeps me on my toes." "Sounds like he has a handful," Alex said, a soft warmth in his tone, as if willing her to share more. "That's an understatement. But he has pure joy. And that's what I focus on." The thought of her son dissolved her fear, if only for a moment. There was silence between them, punctuated only by the distant laughter of children and the whir of rides. Sarah's heart raced, thoughts swirling in a dizzying combination of hope and fear. She finally spoke. "What about you? I saw you at the local art show a few months back. Your work is incredible." Alex shifted in his seat, running a hand through his hair. "Thanks. It's been my outlet, you know? The one thing that keeps me grounded amidst everything." He hesitated, eyes catching hers. "It was hard rebuilding after us." The painful truth lingered in the air. They both bore the weight of choices made too quickly, of dreams sabotaged by the reality of growing up. She tried to focus on new passions, new people, but the thought of Alex and the life they could have had together would always gnaw at her. "Yeah, I get that," she murmured, looking away, feeling the flicker of a tear. "I didn't think I would feel so lost sometimes." "Me too." His honesty was refreshing, almost therapeutic. "I thought when I moved back, I could start fresh. But memories are stubborn." Sarah met his gaze, her heart thumping, a blend of sorrow and something softer, maybe even hopeful. "I thought I could bury everything, but it's never really gone, is it?" "No, it's not that simple." He took a breath, like he was summoning courage. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe facing it is where we find the forward, right?" In that moment everything shifted. The air hummed with potential, sparking ideas that danced around their unaddressed feelings. She felt a sudden urge to reach out, to touch his hand, grounding both of them in the swirling chaos around them. But a buzz from her pocket interrupted a text from Jake. "Mom, can I have more cotton candy?" "Duty calls," she said, glancing at the screen and smiling at her son's enthusiasm. "Looks like I'm a distraction," Alex said lightly, but there was a deep strain in his laughter, a laced acknowledgement of all the unfinished stories between them. Sarah stood torn. "Alex, can we talk again sometime? You and Jake maybe?" He interrupted, his eyes brimming with sincerity. "I'd like to know how you're handling everything together." Her heart raced. "Yeah, I'd like that." As she walked back to Jake, the questions multiplied. Would reconnecting heal the wounds, or deepen them? Could they find closure, or was this the beginning of something new? "Mom, look at the puppy." Jake's delighted shout broke into her thoughts, pulling her back into his world, one where possibilities felt endless. And yet, the question lingered, hanging in the air like cotton candy clouds. What would happen if they crossed that line back into each other's lives? Would the past prove to be a burden or a bridge to something more? Jake's tiny fingers wrapped around her hand, his excitement infectious as they moved toward the booth selling cotton candy. Sarah smiled, caught between her son's joy and the weight of the conversation that still lingered in her mind. "Can I get the blue one?" he asked, bouncing on his toes like a spring-loaded toy, his eyes wide with hope. "Of course, buddy. One blue cotton candy coming right up," she replied, her heart softening as she watched him practically burst with delight. But Alex's words echoed, drowning out the cheerful sounds of the fair. "Maybe facing it is where we find the forward." What did that really mean for them? Jake tugged at her hand and she refocused on him. "Mom, look at the giant slide." He pointed, eyes shining. "Can we go on it after?" "Please." "Sure, let us finish our cotton candy first, and then we'll make our way over," she promised, wrapping her arm around him. Together, they strode toward the booth, where the vendor was working diligently to spin sugar into fluffy clouds of sweetness. As she watched her son, a pang of guilt hit her hard. What if re-entering Alex's life was a mistake? She wanted to be there for Jake, to give him everything he needed, but what if reconnecting with Alex meant risking her son's stability? "Mom." Jake's voice pulled her back. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just thinking," she replied, kneeling down to meet his level. "You know I love our adventures, right?" "Of course. You're the best adventurer ever." Jake giggled, throwing his arms around her neck. Her heart swelled. In that moment, she realized she couldn't let her past fears control their future. No matter what was going on with Alex, Jake was her priority, and that was how it should remain. With their cotton candy in hand, they made their way to the giant slide, where the energy of laughter and squeals enveloped them. Sarah couldn't help but notice the carefree spirit of children running around her. They reminded her of the innocence she and Alex once shared. After a thrilling ride down the slide, Jake squealed with delight. "Let us go again." "Okay, but just one more time," she said, unable to contain her laughter as they climbed the steps again, both bubbling with joy. Afterward, they stumbled toward a quieter part of the fair, where the lights twinkled above like stars. "Mom, can I pick out a toy?" Jake asked, pointing toward a booth filled with stuffed animals. "All right, but just one thing," she said. "Let us see what's available." As Jake examined the colorful animals, she thought back to Alex, waiting at that rickety bench. She tried to push the thoughts aside, but a wave of nostalgia washed over her. What they had could never merely be erased. Jake proudly selected a plush golden retriever, naming it Buddy with an enthusiastic grin. They walked back through the fair, the sound of laughter weaving around them like a comforting blanket. As they neared the exit, Sarah spotted Alex in the distance, leaning against a tree, his expression contemplative as he glanced at the fairgoers. Her heart fluttered with uncertainty. Jake pulled her toward a carousel. "Can we ride that one last, Mom?" "Absolutely," she said, but she felt torn, a conflict of joy for her son and trepidation about what might unfold if their paths crossed again. As they climbed onto the wooden horses, Sarah's heart raced. Would she have the courage to face Alex? Or would she let the moment slip away, allowing it to fade like the last remnants of sunlight on a warm summer evening? In a rush of excitement, she looked up and saw Alex approaching, his face lighting with recognition. Moments like this often changed everything. What would happen next? The carousel spun, a colorful blur of painted horses and joyful faces, but all Sarah could focus on was Alex. He was moving closer, his eyes fixated on them, and her heart thudded an erratic rhythm in her chest. Jake's laughter rang in her ears, contrasting sharply with the turmoil churning inside her. "Look, Mom. I'm flying," Jake shouted, arms outstretched, his golden retriever clutched tightly under one arm. Sarah forced a smile, trying to match his excitement. "You're a champion, Jake," she cheered, though the words felt hollow. When the carousel slowed, she could no longer avoid the inevitable. Alex stood before her, his hands stuffed in his pockets, a hint of vulnerability in his stance. "Hi, Sarah," he said, his voice steady yet soft, as if he were treading lightly on fragile ground. "Hey, Alex," she replied, her throat tightening. She felt the happy energy of Jake's world wrap around her like a shield, but the reality of the past loomed large nonetheless. "Looks like you've had quite the day," he gestured toward Jake, who was obliviously inspecting Buddy with wide eyes, full of innocence and wonder. Yeah, he is having the time of his life, Sarah said, unable to hide her pride. Jake had that way of lighting up every situation. Even this one. Alex smiled, but the tension was palpable. I've missed seeing you both. It's been a while. She nodded, swallowing hard. It has. The memories flooded her. The laughter, the plans, the love that had once seemed so unstoppable. Now standing here, they felt like shards of glass, sharp and dangerous. Jake looks so much like you, Alex continued, his voice laced with a blend of tenderness and longing. I always admired how strong you are, how you've managed everything. Thank you, she replied cautiously, the compliment hovering between them. A world of unsaid words lingered, and she could feel Jake's excitement melting away into awkward silence. Can we go on the Ferris wheel next? Jake piped up, unaware of the emotional maelstrom swirling around his mother. He tugged on her sleeve, eyes pleading. Sure, buddy, she said, desperate for an escape from the weight of the moment with Alex. Let us go. As they started to walk away, Sarah caught the briefest glimpse of disappointment in Alex's eyes. It tugged at her heart. Sarah, wait, he called, stepping closer. She paused, torn between the present and the shadows of history. What is it, Alex? Her voice trembled as she turned back to him. I wanted to see how you're really doing. Not just how Jake is, but he hesitated, clearly grappling with what to say. I know things ended badly between us, but I've thought about you a lot. Those words sent a rush of confusion through her. She wanted to respond, to explain her fears and dreams, but the emotions twisted inside her like a storm. Jake was bouncing on his feet, clearly eager to move on, and all she could think was how Alex had once delivered news that shattered them. Can we talk? He pressed, sincerity etched across his face. Somewhere quiet. The world around her faded for a moment. Taking a deep breath, she felt the pull of questions she long wanted to ask swirling with the need to protect Jake. What was she walking into? Was she ready for this? Okay, she said cautiously, feeling her heart race at the enormity of the moment. Let us talk. She took a small step toward him, her mind in a whirl. In that instant, the carnival lights danced more brightly, the laughter felt further away, and her world began to shift. Could this meeting lead to healing or just more heartache? As they moved off to the side, Jake skipped ahead, oblivious, full of joy and innocence. But in the air between them, a deeper connection was momentarily rekindling. Would it change everything? The sounds of the fair faded, replaced by the thumping of her heart, as she prepared to face what came next. What truths lay ahead for Sarah and Alex, and could they really ever find a way forward? The quiet corner off the bustling fairground felt like a world apart as Sarah and Alex found themselves shrouded in tangled uncertainty. Jake's laughter faded into the distance, and the chaos of the carnival spun around them like a distant melody. Thank you for agreeing to this, Sarah, Alex began, the light dimming in his eyes, replaced by a seriousness that made her heart race. He shifted closer, the familiar smell of his cologne flooding back memories she had tucked away behind walls of self-defense. I know things ended badly. I wanted the chance to tell you how sorry I am for everything that happened. You deserved better. Sarah inhaled sharply, feelings swirling like leaves caught in a gust. It wasn't just you, Alex. I made choices too. Sometimes, we both went down paths that seemed right at the moment, but led us away from each other. His brow furrowed, and she could see the regret skimming the surface of his eyes. Still, I never wanted to hurt you, and I realized it too late. I've thought about you so many times. It's hard to forget someone who felt like home. A raw wave of emotion crashed over Sarah, the reminiscence of warmth intertwined with the chill of past pain. I thought I could bury those feelings after everything, she replied softly, heart pounding. But seeing you here, the past rushes back, and I'm scared, Alex, scared of what it all means. What it could mean for the future. His gaze held an intensity that pierced through the fear. We can't rewrite history, but we can acknowledge it. I want to understand who we are now. You're not the same person you were, and neither am I. But maybe that means we can explore what we could mean moving forward. The silence stretched, each second a beat of reality settling in. Could they really step into the unknown? Or would the weight of old scars hold them back? Sarah felt a spark of hope, one that ignited even the shadows of doubt. I've spent so much time focusing on being a good mom to Jake and healing. I don't expect everything to magically resolve just because we're talking but a friendship. I could be open to that. A grin broke across Alex's face, and for a fleeting moment, the air thickened with promise. I do like that. I've missed you. It feels good to be honest about it. The corners of her mouth lifted. Honesty, that's a pretty good start. As they stepped back into the fair, the vibrant sounds of joy wrapped around them, reframing reality into something different, something alive. Jake raced toward them, beaming with his new plush toy, Buddy, in his grasp. Mom. Alex. Look what I won. His enthusiasm pulled them back into the joys of the present, where innocence and laughter reigned. Life felt different, lighter, as if clouds had parted just for them. Nice puppy you've got there, Jake, Alex said, crouching down to be at eye level with her son. He looks like quite the adventure buddy. Jake nodded vigorously. He is. Mom told me I could take him to the park tomorrow. Sounds like a plan, Sarah said, feeling the warmth of their little family unit forming. Now with the possibility of Alex being a part of the journey too, as they glided through the fair. Each playful bounce from Jake ignited a string of laughter and childlike joy. Together, they explored the carousel, the Ferris wheel, and the cotton candy booth. Everywhere they went was a reminder of simple pleasures, the sweetness of the moment mingling with the serendipity of rekindled friendship. And as dusk settled in, the fairy lights hung above them like tiny stars, shimmering memories and futures yet untold. Hey Sarah? Alex's voice cut through the night air as they gathered for the grand finale of fireworks display. Yeah? Whatever happens, can we keep this honesty alive? I don't want to lose you again. I want to let that happen, she replied, the steady beacon of conviction lighting her eyes. In that intertwining gaze, they both recognized the past without allowing it to dictate their future. The fireworks erupted in dazzling bursts of color above them, each explosion echoing their newfound clarity, a celebration not just of the night, but of personal transformation, healing, and the unwavering love of family. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with potential, hope, and a future rewritten not with regret, but with the vibrant brushstrokes of resilience and unconditional love. Sarah felt ready, not just for what lay ahead, but for the person she was discovering in herself. As laughter mingled with the crackles of the fireworks, she knew one thing for sure. They would build this life together. The scars would remain, but they would not dictate their story moving forward. With a smile shared between friends and the bond of a mother tight around her heart, Sarah felt it, the joy of transformation igniting within her soul, brightening the path before them. And just like that, life sprang forth into a brighter horizon, echoing the promise of possibilities that awaited. Right there in her small Midwestern town. Life was an adventure, and she was finally ready to embrace it. Don't wait, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Your voice matters, so comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And you need to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, so let us keep the love rolling.